The man who stepped into East Forge Auto Repair didn't look like he belonged. His boots were cracked. His shirt was too big. His face was kind, but tired. He introduced himself as Joe, the new hire. No resume, no references, just a soft voice and a willingness to work. Manager Travis Green barely looked up from his phone when Joe arrived. "You're the new janitor? Tools are in the back. Don't touch anything important. And stay out of the way," Travis muttered. No one knew Joe was actually Joseph Langston, the silent co-founder of East Forge, a once-respected business he'd stepped away from after a cancer diagnosis. Months of treatment later, Joe returned in secret. Rumors of poor leadership, complaints from longtime customers, and internal theft had reached him. He needed to see it for himself, not as a boss, but as an outsider. Joe scrubbed oil off floors. He picked cigarette butts from the gutters. He swept metal shards from beneath lifts where no one else cared to clean. And while he worked, he watched. Travis strutted through the shop like he owned it. Barked orders. Ignored customers. Laughed at the new guy behind his back. "You're lucky we even let you mop, old man," he joked one afternoon, making a younger employee chuckle nervously. Joe said nothing, just smiled and kept working. But the truth was ugly. He saw Travis pocketing cash and skipping receipts. He heard him talk down to a young single mother, quoting her double the real cost for brake pads. Joe offered to help once, only to be shoved aside. "Nobody needs your grandpa advice," Travis snapped. "This is my shop now." But Joe didn't come to argue. He came to... The rain hadn't stopped. Joe Langston stood outside the shop he'd just reclaimed, staring at the screen of his phone, his heart pounding like a war drum. "Evan," he repeated. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, "So you found it." His son's voice hadn't changed. Calm, cold, calculated. "Tell me it's not true. Tell me Travis wasn't stealing parts and funneling them to a company you're fronting." Evan didn't answer. The silence spoke louder than words. "I gave everything to this business, Evan, to give you a future. Is this how you repay it?" Finally, Evan's voice returned, controlled, almost smug. "You build an empire, Dad, but empires don't last unless they evolve. You still think loyalty and handshakes run the world? Wake up." Travis was a pawn. You just burned the board. Joe felt the sting in his chest, not just from the betrayal, but from the truth buried in Evan's words. Maybe he had gotten too comfortable with the old way of doing things. But ethics? Integrity? Those were never meant to go out of style. That night, Joe sat in his study, going over every file he had recovered. Forge, too, wasn't just a shell company. It had 3 other linked corporations across different states, all recently registered under aliases, all tied back to one name, Evan Royce Langston. The real damage wasn't just the money. It was the trust. The clients Evan had lured away under false pretenses. The contracts poached. The lies spun like silk. Joe realized with dread. His own son was building a rival auto chain using stolen assets from East Forge. And worse, he had help. 2 days later, Joe arranged a meeting. Not in a boardroom, but in the old garage where he first taught Evan how to change an engine. Evan arrived in a sleek car, designer suit, sunglasses he didn't need. "Nostalgic? Huh," he said, glancing around. "Smells like oil and failure." Joe didn't flinch. "I didn't call you here to reminisce. I called you to give you a choice." He laid 2 documents on the workbench. One was a cease and desist order, the other a proposal. "Shut it down. Come back. Let's fix this together. Start fresh. I'll make you partner. You do it right. With me." Evan looked at the papers, then laughed. "Fix it? You still don't get it. I don't want a piece of East Forge." He leaned in. "I want to destroy it." Evan tossed the papers aside. "Travis was nothing. You think I didn't plan for him to fail? You walking back into the company? That was part of the equation. I wanted you to see what you built burn, so you'd hand over what's left." Joe's face hardened. "You think I'll give in? After everything?" Evan smirked. "You don't have a choice." And that's when he slid a USB drive across the table. Joe frowned. "What is this?" "Everything," Evan whispered. "Your legacy, your failures, your secrets, all the things you buried when you became a boss." "The truth, Dad." Joe picked up the drive, his hand trembling. "Where did you get this?" But Evan was already walking away. "You've got 48 hours. Show the world who you are, or I will. That night, Joe sat alone in his office. He stared at the USB, plugged it in. A folder popped up. Redacted. 1994. Internal. He clicked. Photos. Old scans. Documents marked confidential. Names he hadn't seen in 30 years. And one file titled, Langston Incident Cover-Up. Joe's breath caught in his throat. A ghost from his past. Something he thought was gone. Something he buried, along with the man who knew the truth. Just then his phone buzzed. A private number. He answered. A familiar voice, low and trembling, spoke. Joe, I warned you not to dig this up. They're coming. Joe's heart stopped. Who's coming? The line went dead. And in the distance, sirens. The sirens drew closer, howling like wolves on the hunt. Joe Langston stood frozen in his office, the soft glow of the screen illuminating his face. The words, Langston Incident, Cover-Up blinked back at him like a curse from the past. And then, the phone call. A voice he hadn't heard in decades. Joe, I warned you not to dig this up. They're coming. Then, click. Silence. And now, flashing lights spilled across his window. He didn't move. He couldn't. On the screen were documents from 1994. Contracts. Emails. A non-disclosure agreement he had signed when East Forge was just beginning. But buried beneath it all was something worse. A hush payment made to the family of a former employee. An accident. One that Joe remembered all too well. An employee crushed beneath a failed hoist. A cover-up orchestrated not by Joe, but by his then-partner, Russell Vane. A man who disappeared years ago after a federal investigation quietly fizzled out. Joe had stayed silent. For the company. For the dream. And now that silence had come back like a storm ready to tear down everything he rebuilt. A knock. Then another. Firm. Slow. Joe reached for the door. It wasn't the police. It was a woman. Mid-30s. Black coat. Sharp eyes. Mr. Langston. I'm Agent Dana Cruz. FBI. Joe stepped back. FBI? What's this about? Dana held up a file. The same one he had just opened. You've been accessed, Mr. Langston. We believe someone used your son's network to distribute classified documents connected to a dormant federal case, the Langston incident. We believe that someone is trying to resurrect it. Joe's heart dropped. Why now? Dana looked him dead in the eye. Because Russell Vane is alive. And he's not just back. He's funding a hostile acquisition of East Forge, using your son as the front. Joe, try to make sense of it. Russell Vane, a man who faked his death, who left Joe to clean up the mess. Now he was back, hiding behind his own son, Evan. Had Evan known the truth? Or had Russell manipulated him too? Dana revealed more. Evan's new companies weren't just shady. They were shells connected to offshore accounts traced back to a ghost investor codenamed Forge Shadow. And every clue pointed to one man, Vane. He's planning something big, Dana said. And your business is just the start. That night, Joe received a package. No return address. Inside, a flash drive, a leather glove, and a letter. Joseph, you always were too soft. I protected us when you couldn't. But now you're in my way. Step aside, or I'll burn down everything with your name on it. There was no signature. Just an old, rusted garage key taped to the back. Joe recognized it instantly. It belonged to the first garage they ever opened together. The one they shut down after the accident. Joe told Dana about the key. It's bait, she warned. I know, Joe said. But if I don't walk into the fire, he'll burn my legacy down without me. That night, Joe drove alone to the abandoned garage. Every corner whispered of old memories. Dreams built with trust and shattered by betrayal. Inside, the air was cold, silent. Dust floated like ghosts. Then, the lights snapped on. And there he was, Russell Vane, older, colder, with Evan standing just behind him. Welcome home, Joe, Russell sneered. Evan's eyes darted between them. Uncertainty painted across his face. Joe took one step forward. You lied to him, Joe said. He needed a father, Russell replied. One willing to do what it takes. Joe looked at Evan. Son, this isn't you. But Evan's hand slowly reached into his coat. And when it came out, he was holding a flash drive. Then tell me, Dad, what's on this drive that Russell didn't want me to see? Russell's face went pale. Joe's blood ran cold. The truth was about to come out. But who would survive it? To be continued. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and comment for part 2. Some betrayals are personal. Others are deadly. In the next part, we are going to see the truth behind the Langston incident and the real enemy hiding in the shadows.